Enter a realm where innocence shatters and the path to darkness begins early. Meet Ponchis, a mere 11 years old, yet a pawn in the merciless cartel game, obliterating the notion of youthful purity. Join us for today's bite-sized crime story as we examine the life of Ponchis, tracing the footsteps of one of the youngest cartel assassins the world has seen. A young life that reveals a web of violence, manipulation, and stolen youth. The shocking tale of Ponchis serves as a stark reminder of the dire consequences of child exploitation by cartels, shedding light on the formidable obstacles that law enforcement face when combating organized criminal enterprises. Edgar Jimenez Lugo, or Ponchis, was born in 1996 in San Diego, California, in a troubled household. The hard reality of a dysfunctional childhood shaped his subsequent participation in a criminal organization. Edgar saw his parents' drug use as a child. From an early age, he witnessed violence, instability, and disputes in his home, all of which shaped his worldview. His home life was so dire that authorities from Child Protective Services ended up removing Edgar and his siblings from their drug-addicted parents, and this abrupt intervention directly impacted his life. Despite the turmoil, however, his paternal grandma offered the children shelter and was a stabilizing influence, bringing them to Mexico and providing love, care, and advice. However, this period of stability did not last long, as Edgar's grandma died of cancer in 2004. This resulted in his dropping out of school in 3rd grade and finding himself in a world of uncertainty and peril. Both vulnerable and exposed following his tragic loss, Edgar was forced into life on the streets, and the lack of supervision and love and support drove him to criminal circles who offered a form of security. In short, a damaged home, violence, and the death of his grandmother led to his recruitment into a vicious cartel, an inconceivable path for a young child. Edgar Jimenez Lugo met South Pacific cartel leader Julio Radia Hernandez during this difficult period of his life, and it was Julio's arrival in Edgar's life that led him to unspeakable bloodshed and criminality. It seems implausible that Julio Radia Hernandez would take a child down the dangerous road of crime, as he initially represented prosperity, riches, and charity, which appealed to a youngster who had only known poverty and uncertainty. Julio gradually earned Edgar's confidence and became his mentor, with Edgar receiving Julio's efforts as real generosity. Unlike Edgar's family experience of neglect and disorder, Julio lavished him with presence and care. Julio's manipulation of Edgar was a disturbing example of power dynamics, as the child increasingly accepted Julio as a guardian angel who had saved him from suffering. The youngster was unaware that Julio was a top commander in the ruthless South Pacific cartel. The dissonance between perception and reality was the actual tragedy. Edgar saw Julio as a role model for stability and leadership, oblivious to the horrors behind the facade. Edgar's emotional connection with Julio made him vulnerable to the perilous road he was soon led down. Edgar's already weak confidence and security were shattered when he discovered his instructor was a crucial participant in a violent and fearful criminal organization. However, the emotional ties to the man who had been generous to him were too strong. Edgar Jimenez Lugo's journey into the horrific world of a sicario, a name that frightens many, is a sobering example of children's susceptibility to criminal organizations. Edgar's position in the South Pacific cartel, starting with delivering drugs and evolving to executing people, shows how a young life can be manipulated to undertake horrendous acts. Edgar's first cartel job was distributing cocaine to Morelos traffickers. As he grew stronger and more confident, he was molded into roles that were more bloodthirsty. He moved from safe drug delivery to bloody executions. He initiated torture, death, and decapitation of cartel adversaries, a disturbing change in his role. Edgar became infamous after shocking footage of his violence was released. A video titled "The Human Piñata" showed cartel gunmen brutally beating and killing a man, and Edgar's involvement in the terrible spectacle was unmistakable. He was also pictured clutching firearms and posing with corpses, demonstrating his status as a cartel enforcer. Edgar Jimenez Lugo's life changed when the Mexican army arrested him at 14, marking the beginning of the end of his notorious South Pacific cartel career. His arrest and disclosures shocked the world, revealing the dark acts committed by someone so young. Caught trying to flee the country with an older sister, Edgar was hoping to find his mother in San Diego. His arrest coincided with the release of horrific footage of South Pacific cartel killings, however, and these films revealed both the cartel's savagery and Edgar's involvement. Authorities were shocked at Edgar's politeness during interrogation, which contrasted with the horror of his crimes. He admitted to the cartel's horror with eerie composure when questioned, explaining how he had executed cartel members since age 12. Fully composed, he stated how he was paid $2,500 weekly to carry out the cartel's ghoulish directives. Edgar fully accepts his involvement in beheadings, executions, and severe brutality. His calm and remorseless revelation of these horrible actions revealed the depth of his enslavement into darkness and violence. Unavoidable evidence, along with his terrifying revelations and physical proof, confirmed Edgar's cartel participation. He had been seen carrying weapons and posing with cartel victims' corpses in photographs that confirmed his involvement in cruelty that scared communities and outraged the world. His confessions and strong photographic evidence proved his guilt. Edgar Jimenez Lugo's arrest and shocking confessions of involvement in the South Pacific cartel's brutal activities sparked controversy, especially raising questions about how the Mexican justice system handles child offenders involved in organized crime. Edgar's offenses, committed as a child, made his case difficult. Mexican law bans judges from imprisoning youngsters under 14, and the maximum punishment for 14 to 17-year-olds is 5 years. These restrictions contradicted the severity of Edgar's crimes, leaving many wondering how justice would be served and society safeguarded from such a cruel person. Edgar's trial caused widespread outcry and discussions regarding his minimal sentence. Critics argued that his release after only 3 years, given the severity of his crimes, sent a troubling message and failed to account for the immense damage he had caused. Edgar's punishment was lenient, casting doubt on the legal system's competence to handle young cartel criminals. While some saw Edgar primarily as a victim of circumstance, a child nurtured and manipulated by cartel members, others emphasized his role as an active participant in abhorrent acts and advocated for a harsher sentence. The court processes also raised the ethical question of reconciling justice with addressing the root causes that led Edgar into the criminal underground. Edgar's release after just 3 years prompted questions about the Mexican judicial system. Critics questioned if a brief incarceration could change a young person schooled in violence and criminality. This aspect of his narrative exemplified the system's broader difficulties in rehabilitating juvenile offenders, particularly those exposed to extreme criminal environments. Now a young adult, Edgar was allowed to redefine himself and escape the specter of his criminal involvement upon his release. His U.S. citizenship complicated his reintegration, which allowed him to return to San Antonio or San Diego. Edgar had to tread carefully in his newfound freedom due to his criminal past and cartel fame. Reintegrating into society after years in prison is difficult for any former offender, much alone Edgar, who was involved in cartels from such a young age. The shame of his past prevented him from getting an education, job, and career growth, and he suffered severe criticism from a society that defined him by his criminal past. However, reports indicated that Edgar was intent on pursuing a different path. Interviews prior to his release showed his desire for a new start and a brighter future. He wanted to escape his criminal past, reconcile with his family, and contribute to society. His remarks revealed his hope that he could evolve despite his miserable past. Edgar's tale highlights Mexico's cartel-related child maltreatment. Protecting vulnerable children requires immediate awareness, advocacy, and action. Breaking the cycle of exploitation requires addressing the core reasons for cartel recruitment, such as poverty and lack of education. Edgar's narrative calls attention to structural flaws that allow criminal groups to victimize children and teens. Safe locations for children to disclose recruiting efforts without repercussions are crucial. Law enforcement, NGOs, and communities can help cartel-tempted youth choose a better path. International collaboration is essential to stop criminal organizations from exploiting children worldwide. Edgar Jimenez Lugo illustrates the agony of a stolen childhood and the moral need to protect the defenseless. It confronts the unpleasant truth that when children are trapped in a cycle of violence, it damages them for life. We can prevent more innocent lives from being swallowed by criminal organizations by publicizing their experiences, pressing for reform, and encouraging resilience. The struggle against child exploitation is a fight for justice, society, and humanity.